Welcome to our Thursday show. And the picture you're seeing there is of Nezam Hafiz, who played for the USA and was actually a vice captain. And of course, today is the 13th, just a couple of days past 9/11. And Nezam Hafiz was working in one of the towers when the planes hit. So we honor him every year. And of course, he has been inducted into the American College Cricket Hall of Fame. So that's Nizam right there. And we want to always remember him. He played for Guyana under 19 and played 6 first-class matches before immigrating to the United States, where he played in the Commonwealth Cricket League, and then finally was selected for USA, toured England, toured Canada, and was a very good player before dying at age 32 in the terrorist attack. So we want to welcome Harsh. We have a lot to talk about. We'll talk about, of course, the India versus England series, with England winning 4-1. Hi, Shrikar. Hi, Ali. And welcome to everyone else joining us. Hi, Harsh.
Hi, Mr. Jora. How's it going?
Good, good. And I wanted to touch, before we get into that series, I wanted to talk about the Midwest Championship, which is our first, the American College Cricket first regional championship. We've decided the location, and we're going to talk a little bit about the teams that will be playing. Just give me a second here. I just want to, as a matter of fact, you know what? You go ahead and, of course, England won 4-1. Give us your thoughts on the series and certain salient points, like the bowling of James Anderson, the Indian bowlers, the Indian batting, and so on. Go ahead.
Sure. So as you said, England won 4-1. And first of all, congratulations to England. Of course, they were the team that definitely played better throughout the series. And I think they'll, of course, be very happy with this win. They've sealed the series 4-1. They're on a good start to their Sri Lanka tour, or they have a good precedent. It was a great end to the English summer. And of course, a wonderful farewell for Alistair Cook. So congratulations to England. But I also want to say that I personally would congratulate the Indian team. Of course, they won't be happy with the result with 4-1, but I do believe that the score 4-1, is a little unfair to the Indian team, because it masks how close the series was at certain points, and honestly, how tough the competition was. Yes, England won 4 of the matches. Yes, England won the series, but they definitely had to fight for it. Except for the second test, it was never really a walkover, and lots of times the matches were pretty close. So I think both teams will be pretty satisfied with their performances, although India will have some introspection to do with regards to what could have gone better. So you talked about James Anderson, and I was just doing some research, and there were some really interesting stats that I found. Of course, he's broken into the top 5 number of wicket takers in Test with 564 wickets. Most of those have been at home in England, as has been with most bowlers. I mean, he has a better average. His average is 23 at home, as opposed to 32 abroad. So he's definitely a lot better in England, where the Duke's ball and the sort of conditions really help him swing. But and one thing about James Anderson that I found very interesting was the number of batsmen he's dismissed the most. And it just really shows the sort of quality, how good a player he really is. So the batsman he's dismissed the most is Peter Siddle from Australia, 11 times. But after that, you have Sachin Tendulkar, 9 times. You have Michael Clarke, 9 times. 9 times. So, it's really just amazing that the bowlers that Anderson has dismissed the most have been these top-level batsmen, some of the best players the game in the modern era has ever really seen. And it just really speaks miles as to his skill. And so that's just a tribute to James Anderson and the wonderful bowler that he is. And honestly, he's only getting better. Uh, People talk about how, he's a fast bowler. He might run out of steam. He might need to retire soon. He's, I think, 36 years old or something. But over the last 2 years, his average has actually been shorter, has been smaller than any time before. He's only been improving over the years. He's gotten more accurate. He's gotten more swing. He's gotten a better line. He's gotten a better length. And I'm really just looking forward to see how he performs in the future years.
But you reference is how many wickets he took overseas versus how many he took at home. Do you have any numbers on those?
Yeah, so 368 of his wickets were overseas. So 368, 564 minus 368 was how many he took at home.
So he took more wickets overseas than at home?
Sorry, 368 at home and 196 overseas.
Wouldn't you say that that's a very significant difference? Doesn't it raise questions about his ability really to perform in other than English conditions?
It's a good question, and I think that, yeah, he has definitely been a bowler who's been most lethal in English conditions. But at the same time, I'm sure we can do this if we study the averages of other bowlers, and I'll be willing to bet that most fast bowlers actually have some of the best averages in England and Australia, simply because of the conditions that you find there. Now, maybe I'm wrong on this in terms of stats, but I would think that James Anderson, so for example, I don't have the stats on this, but he was he was able to master swing bowling really well, and that really helped them in a test against India in Kolkata. And so while the stats definitely, point him in England's favor, I'm just wondering about how effective other fast bowlers would have been outside England and Australia as well.
Well, I've always heard, not so much from English fans, but from others, questions about James Anderson, the fact that he's mainly, some batsmen are accused of being flat track bullies and that kind of stuff. It's being said in a bowling sense about James Anderson. I'm not impressed by how he performs outside of England. And the fact is, look, that's a tremendous amount of wickets to get in England out of all your stats. That's over 2/3. So that to me sort of tarnishes his standing with respect to other bowlers. Maybe it as you said, a lot of bowlers do tend to favor their home conditions. But it would be worthwhile to look at how that compares to some other top bowlers. I know there are bowlers who really performed really well outside of their countries, and a difference in number of wickets they took versus that at home might have been mainly attributable to playing less tests outside rather than as a percentage. Because there have been bowlers in the past like Dennis Lillee, Jeff Thompson, and so on, some of the West Indian fast bowlers who have performed incredibly well outside of the West Indies, for example. Australian bowlers that I mentioned, those two have performed incredibly well outside of Australia. And even the Indian spinners of the past, they had some good records outside. So that might be something worth taking a look at. But let's go back to England versus India as a whole. You took a line that I've noticed some people have taken, which is that they're sort of praising the Indian effort and not really seeing, the result as 4-1, it not appearing as negative as that result might seem. Virat Kohli himself sort of said that the result is not exactly what happened, that India played really well. I'd like to say the opposite, which is that the result in the end tells you the story, and to lose 4-1 is indicative of exactly who dominated. I know that there were, India, sometimes they were not far from the score, like in the last innings, they weren't that far. But at the end of the day, the result 4-1, I would not leave that happy. This is not a built-in process.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to beat England. That's what you want to do, especially when your team itself is pretty strong. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the Indian bowling is fantastic. And not only is it fantastic, it has people in the wings that are not getting to play. I
Yeah.
mean, it's an awesome thing for any cricket fan, but especially an Indian cricket fan to have that kind of bowling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when you're not winning, like in the past, I used to say the thing that stops me from really saying India's a world champion is the fact that they were for forever, India didn't have a fast bowler, much
Possibly.
less a whole attack, right? And you can't be a world champion. You might win tests here or there with spinners, but without a pace attack, you really can't claim to be the world champion. Now they have,
Mm-hmm.
and this is where the batting didn't do what it needed to do. And I, for one, I mean, I wouldn't be praiseworthy of my efforts if my team, lost 4-1.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, some people are saying that it was a pretty good performance despite the result. At the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, to me, the result really is what tells this story.
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. And just before I get to that point, I want to talk about the fast bowler away versus home. So the stats actually do confirm what you're saying. Glenn McGrath, who James Anderson just beat, he had 289 wickets at home and 274 wickets away. So that's really close compared to what you had
Look
for
at that.
James
Yeah,
Anderson.
yeah.
Yeah. So you are right about that. With regards to India versus England and losing 4-1, I think, you know, it's a very fair criticism that you can say that, oh, India put pressure and all, but the result is still 4-1. And what I'd like to say, or I'd like to, sort of repeat what Virat Kohli said in his press conference, is that, like you said, India's been having a great bowling attack, and they have a good batting attack. They have lots of choice, and the players who they have right now are very high quality. So when you look at the team as a whole, there's nothing that's really popping out that's an urgent problem that needs to be fixed. Yes, you had some problems with openers. Yes, you've had some problem with the middle order and batting order collapses, but nothing extremely glaring pops out.
Exactly. It's
But
it's theoretically it's a fantastic team.
yeah, the problem is that is keeping is not it's not even putting pressure on the team, it's keeping that pressure on. And that's definitely what made the difference between England and India this series, which is why England has performed so well and India really not in terms of the win-loss ratio. When I say that India might be happy with their performance, what I mean is, them being able to at least create situations where there is pressure on the English team. In the past series that I remember, the last time India went to England, it was not the same, although I may be wrong. Now, where India definitely needs to improve is in applying that pressure and keeping it on the opposing team. So they've been able to take top order wickets, but they haven't been able to get the tail out. They've had fantastic starts from Virat Kohli, but then their middle order just collapses. Things like that. So I think your criticism is definitely a fair one.
And the I was just about to I was distracted.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely like you said, there's no glaring lack of talent or anything like that. So what it goes back to is why, right? And one other thing I've seen on comments on cricket pages, etc., by Indian fans is a lot of them are critical about Virat Kohli's captaincy.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's definitely a fair criticism. So one might wonder, and maybe this is something that should have been thought about or pointed out before the test started, but one might wonder why you had, for example, only one spinner in the second innings. Jadeja bowled 47 overs. He almost bowled an entire ODI innings. In the total match, he bowled 77 overs. So, one might wonder whether Virat Kohli should have pushed for another spinner if you want to use spinners so much. And so that's definitely I think it's a valid concern that Virat Kohli, he has some ways to go in becoming the best captain. That said, I think, what he has brought to the team is a sort of energy, a vigor, and a sort of, idea that we are going to play for results. Even in the last innings, we saw that when KL Rahul and Rishabh Pant came to the crease, the way they played was just full of intent. Just, they weren't playing for a draw, which is what I think some past Indians.
Oh, we've lost Harsh. But I agree with what he's saying there. There's an energy, there's a result in the game as opposed to being a bit defensive. And that has, hi, Harsh. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there that definitely Virat brings some of his attitude to the game, which is very aggressive, wanting to win or play for a result kind of approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I would say. That's been the main positive thing in terms of Virat's captaincy. That said, like you said, there are definitely things that, one might ask as either questionable decisions or something that might need to improve. Hopefully, against Australia, we'll see some changes.
Yeah, well, the thing is, when do you ever get perfection?
Mm-hmm.
So, people can validly, I think, look at his captaincy critically after this series. But at the same time, we ourselves have seen where he's brought some strong positives to the table, apart from his unquestioned brilliance as a batsman.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that is obviously being questioned and will be is the role of Ravi Shastri. So we'll see how that goes. I personally, didn't think it was a good move to get rid of Anil Kumble and bring in Ravi Shastri. But of course, I have nothing to do, no say in that. But the thing is, we're seeing where a team that seems to be so capable of this, being the top team, not actually being there. And so you have to look for where the issue might be. And it all points right now, according to all of the comments I'm seeing everywhere, Indian fans, non-Indian fans, it's all pointing to Ravi Shastri. Whilst Virat is getting some criticism, practically everybody's unanimous in being critical of Ravi Shastri. And I guess we'll hear more about that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I make a point about that? Yeah.
Go ahead.
So that said, I think it's sort of easy to make Ravi Shastri a scapegoat for the Indian team's failure, but you have to see that lots of times the batsmen weren't given the support that bowlers required. I don't know if that's Virat Kohli's fault or if that's Ravi Shastri's fault or if it's the players themselves, or maybe it's just great English bowling. Who knows? So I think there are lots of factors that need to be considered.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, I'm going to say this again. I've said it before, and I'm going to say this again. I definitely say the batsmen have a large part to do with this. And it goes back to this leg side wide rule, whereby they play so much one-day international cricket and T20 cricket that they come into the test matches and they're all turning their bats onto the leg side to move that ball from the offside to the leg side. And that's where they're getting out, especially when you're getting a guy like James Anderson swinging that ball. You can't do that. So I clearly, as I said, that particular leg side, everything on the leg side wide rule that's applicable to ODIs and T20 cricket is the main factor, I believe, in the Indian. So many talented batsmen actually failing it when it comes to the test. Now, let's go to the Midwest Championship, which is going to be taking place 29th and 30th. We settled on Detroit as the location and the 9 teams that are supposed to play in that. And it includes 3 past champions, Wayne State last year, Buffalo the year before that. And of course, what's the other one? Give me 1 second. And the other one before would have been Ohio State. Ohio State. So 3 past champions are playing in that Midwest Championship. And We also have Ryerson. Ryerson was last year's national champion, winning the American College Cricket Championship. And this year they won the Canadian College Cricket National Championship just a couple of weeks ago. So they're coming in pretty strong and full of confidence. And when they were playing in the Northeast, they were winning that in successive years. But then they started going to the Midwest once we moved that to Detroit because it's pretty close to Toronto. And they've not had the same success there. But as you would have just heard from what I said, you know, they're pretty strong and have had significant success recently. So they're coming in very hopeful. Last year, Laurier was in the finals, so they'll be hopeful of their chances. West Virginia University, of course, they last year and this year, they've played the Midwest because the trophy that's being played for in the Midwest is the Gordon Gee Trophy, which started when he was president of Ohio State University. He's now president of West Virginia University. So the school prefers them to play in the Midwest Championship in an effort to take that trophy back to the campus and present to Gordon Gee. Now, of course, I'm totally neutral. Any one of my teams, I'm happy if they win. But of course, that would be something remarkable if that were to happen. And I can only imagine Dr. Gordon Gee's face if that were to happen. The other teams playing in this particular championship would have been Carnegie Mellon and Waterloo. Waterloo is new, and they're another Canadian team. So we have 3 Canadian teams playing in the Midwest. And of course, Carnegie Mellon goes back to 2009 when we started American college cricket. So it'll be all these teams here have, you know, they're pretty strong. They've shown their capabilities in the past. So it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out ahead, of course. Yeah. And we're looking to stream those 6 games from that. We'll look into that more. And of course, like I said, it'll be fascinating to see what happens because 9 strong teams coming up against each other to see the champion. Now, since we're on the subject, here's the thing. Saad bin Zafar, who was the MVP at the Canadian Global T20, a Ryerson player and American College Cricket All-Star, he actually was called up by the St. Kitts Patriots to play in the CPL. Wow. So he's right now in the Caribbean. And St. Kitts have actually made it. They have to play one more match. If they win it, they'll get into the finals. If they do, we'll have him in the finals for St. Kitts if they get in. And for the Guyana Amazon Warriors, it's Saurabh Netravalkar is on that team. So that'll be great for us. But here's the other thing. Ryerson now becomes the first of our teams to actually have 2 professional cricketers that have played or are playing in the CPL. Because Nikhil Dutta played for 2 years in the CPL. He also played in the Bangladesh Premier League. So Nikhil Dutta and Saad bin Zafar from Ryerson, you know, establishing a bit of a record there for American college cricket and Canadian college cricket. So best of wishes to our 2 players still in the run in there in the CPL. And we'll be watching what happens. Now, yes, so it's been interesting talking about the whole India versus England series. I thoroughly enjoyed the cricket, much as, you know, from a cricket point of view, I would have liked to see India perform better, considering the talent they have. But, you know, the results are what they are. So we'll see what happens when they go up against Australia. So it's been good talking to you. And like I said, we have the regionals coming up, and we'll have some of those club presidents or captains on in the coming weeks. So the Midwest, 29th and 30th in Detroit. Take care.
See you. Have a good night.
Good night.